Hey everybody, Heather here. So today we are going to be coloring our April 2013 Christmas card kit. I'm trying to do one kit a month, and so far so good. So this month I've picked this cute Stampavie image called Penguin with a Candy Cane. I just thought he was totally adorable and would be perfect this month. If you want to see if he's still available, head over to the store, and I'll put a link down in the description box to the store, and just type in Penguin with Candy Cane and it will pop up if it's available. If it's already gone, then check out some of the newer kits. So I've already stamped my image on Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink. So let's get some coloring done. So I'm going to start by outlining my image, and for that I'm going to use B*0 in my colorless blender. And I'm just going to take my B*0 and I'm going to feather away from his body. So I touch my pen down right next to him and then flick out like I'm making a check mark away from him. I like doing this step first now because if I get some on him, somewhere where it will actually show up, I can erase it without any problems. So we're just going to go all the way around. Go up here, go around this great candy cane. And we're going to be using a lot of reds this time on this image, a lot of red to color with. So I'm going to leave that for last because I always make a mess with it. Me and reds tend to get it everywhere. Okay, so we're just going to continue all the way around out here. Switch my pen down here a little bit more. And when I color for myself, I turn my image all over the place. I just try to keep it still so you guys can look at it. Okay, then I'm going to take my colorless blender and I'm going to lay it down on top of my penguin. And this works best too if your ink, both of these would work best, including the blue, if your pen is wet. So I've refilled my colorless blender before I came in here. But I'm going to set it down on top of my penguin and I'm just going to brush out past all the blue out into the background. And I can really tell I refilled my pen. This is really wet. And we're going to go all the way over on this side, clear to the other side, like that. And then for him to have something to stand on, I'm going to add B*0, and you could make your ground whatever color you wanted. I just wanted him to stand on some snow, so I'm going to make it blue. So we're just going to go around his foot. Uh-oh, sounds like some kids are walking down the street. They must be time for school to get out. So I'm going to take my blue like that. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my B*0 and we're going to go right over the top of that. So I'm going to flick right on top of my B*0 and I'm going to pull it out past where I colored before. Just soften that edge. And then I'm going to take my colorless blender like I did before and I'm just going to flick over the whole entire thing. Get up here between his legs and go out here. And that just gives him something to stand on. You could make it any color you wanted, and I'll probably, when I get done, I'll probably add some glitter or something down there so he has some snow. So next, let's go and do some of the white so I don't have to worry about getting any of my colors in that. So for my white, I'm going to use N2, N1, N0, BV31 in my colorless blender. I'm going to start with N2, and I'm going to, let's just go ahead and start up here on this fur on his little hat. So for that, I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to hold it straight up and down, and I'm going to give it some little dots. So I'm going to try to keep my dots concentrated around the edge of his hat. And it's okay if they go out a little bit. I just want to add a little bit of shadow but still keep his hat white, so I'm going to give it a little dotting. And then we're going to work our way up here to this corner where it's touching that little candy cane. But over here his head's kind of tipped down, so I'm going to go ahead and bring my dots up here to where his cap touches it. But again, I'm keeping them out here in the edge. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to N1, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to add some dots and bring them out just a little bit further, but go in between the dots I just put down. And I'm being quick about touching my pen to the paper, because the longer you hold the pen there, the darker your dots are going to get and the bigger they're going to get. So again, work your way up here to the corner, and then go with N0. And for that, I'm going to keep the dots more down where I already placed the dots, with just a few reaching up past. And it's fine that they're touching the other dots, because it's kind of smoothing them out and smushing them. And now I'm going to go with BV31, and we're going to add some more shadows. So these I want to keep down more towards the bottom and along the edge again of his hat. Just add a little contrast and a little bit of shadow in there. Like that. And then I'm going to take my colorless blender, and I'm just going to go in a circle over the entire thing and smush them all up. So they get nice and blended, but it gives a nice shadow. And once it dries, it's really wet right now, it'll be a lot better. But it gives it a nice shadow along the edge, but still leaves his hat all white. Okay, so let's go down here, and we will do this little puff. And I forgot this little section. He's got a little section of hat over here. So again, we're going to go with N2. And I'm going to do those right along the edge of his hat. And for this little puff over here, we're going to go right along the edge of his little scarf thing. He's got some little puffs on his scarf that stick out. And then I'm going to grab N1, and again, I'm going to add a few over here to the back of his hat that I forgot. And then add a couple more over here to his little puff. And then N0. And again, I did this one more down on the dots I'd already laid down. BV31. And this is just to add some shadows. And then your colorless blender, you just swoosh right over the top of it. And kind of blend them all together there. So while we did that, you can go up here and you can see how it's dried up here on his hat, and it's just got a nice shadow around the edge there. Alright, so more white. Okay, well, let's go back with our N2. And let's add some shadow onto his little face. So he's got some little eye marks right in here. We're going to add a little bit in there. So I'm going to do a couple little dots right along this eye up here towards where he's got those little lines for his fur. And then over here, I'm going to start kind of at the corner of his eye and just add a couple in there. And work my way around the bottom of his face over here till it touches the candy cane. And then we're going to grab N1, and we want to add a few more of these little lighter colored dots. And it's okay if you do a few, your pen touches out there in this part up here on his head, because it's going to be really dark brown or dark black, so it's not going to matter. Okay, and then N0, and this one I'm going to do just kind of on top of some of the dots I already did, just to smush them down. And then BV31, and we just want to add these, just a few in here for our contrast. And you can add as few or as many as you want. I actually colored this image, and this is the colorless blender. And again, you're just going to swirl over that. I actually colored this image. I recommend you stamping it first on a scratch paper and practicing, because I colored him like 3 times already. Okay, so that's his face. So what do we have left? Oh, his little body down here. So let's go down here, and again, you're going to start with N2. And I want to give him a nice shadow down here on the bottom. Move up just a little bit. So I'm just going to put some of my N2 closest down here by his fur, with a few poking up here into the white. And then I'm going to get N1, add a few more Just dot that right along there. N0. And these I try to keep down below, with just maybe a couple coming past my previous colors. BV31. And then your colorless blender to swirl it all together. And that was it for the white on our little man, our little penguin. So I'm going to put this one away, and I'm going to go up here now, and I want to work on this candy cane because it's got some white in there. And for that, we're going to use N10 and the colorless blender. And I can actually put this one away too, just so I don't get them mixed up here. So I'm going to start with my N1, and I'm going to start down here at the bottom. And I'm going to do the stripes that have the little tiny stripe, the two beside it, is red. So, but you can do yours however you want. So I'm going to start with my N1, and I'm going to flick just a little bit on each side of these bigger stripes. Like I said, if you do it now, you don't have to worry about touching that red. And it never fails, I would be touching it. I'm just going to work our way right up the side. I'll get up here to this cute one right here that's going to start curving over. Okay, and then we got the two together. And I'll go up here and we'll get this one. And the edge of this one. Okay, and then I'm going to go with N0. And we're going to want to flick over each of those lines. So I'm going to go right back over my N2 and pull some more color in towards the middle of my candy cane. And when I did it the first time, I waited and did the white last, and of course I touched the red and I had it like everywhere. It was a mess. And it's so discouraging when you get almost finished and you've got this big old blobby mess on there. Okay, and then I took my colorless blender and I just stuck my pin down in the middle and I brushed over the edges of each of those, of my middle part, so I could swipe the color away from the middle of my candy cane. And again, this works perfect because we haven't really colored anything yet, so you're not going to be getting your colorless blender on anything and messing it up. So now let's go do the black, and for that I'm going to use N9, 7, 5, and 3. And I actually tried out the C's and the W's first. The C's I thought were a little too black, and the W's I thought were too brown. So I ended up with the N's, which I thought were perfect. So we're going to start with our N9 first. And let's just go right up here and start on his face. And remember, his face kind of tips down over here a little bit. So I'm going to go in right next to his little eye there and along the edge of his little face. And I'm going to bring my color up about to the edge of the little hat right there. And then I'm going to go along just along the edge where his fur is, and I'm going to give it a few little flicks. And I would say my line's pretty tiny, maybe about 1/8 of an inch wide. Kind of like that across the top. And then down here where his little beak is, I'm going to go right along. And my pen's really wet, so I'm going to be careful and make me a line first so I don't accidentally color his beak, because if you get it on here, you're never going to get it off. It's way too dark. Okay, and then I'm going to go up here a little bit to his eye. Let's go about right there. And then let's do this side, up this side just a little bit too. That looks pretty good. But right down here where his beak is, I'm going to flick this up. So I'm laying my pin down on my line and I'm flicking up a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good. We'll see how that one goes. Okay, and then I'm going to go with N7. And you want to lay down on top of your N9 and flick out just a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going right back along my line along his hat and adding maybe another 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to come down the side of this little candy cane there, and I'm also going to go across the top of his eye just to fill that in. And let's go across the top of this eye to fill that in. Okay, and here in the middle where his nose was, we want to add a little bit more color, so I'm going to go in here and just flick up just a little bit more. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We've got a nice little highlight area still going there. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my N5. Same thing, you lay down on top of your N7. And we're just going to go right along that edge. And I'm going to reduce this space in here. So I'm going to make this a little bit wider up here. I'm going to go back across it a second time so that we can soften that line. And then we're going to go down here and flick across. And again, I'm going to go back the other way so I can soften that line even more. Okay, and that's still quite a bit of white, so I'm going to go in here again and I'm going to go up a second time and pull that ink up quite a bit, still more. So then you got this nice little patch there for my white. So then I'm going to go with N3, my lightest color, to fill that in. So we're going to go right along the edge of our N5 and dab into the white. And N3 is pretty light, so if you scrub it around a bunch, you're going to push color away. So I'm going to go ahead and do that like this. And just lighten it up just a little bit there in that patch. Like that. I think that looks pretty good. So now let's go down and do his hand right here. And this little, I got this little patch of fur right here on his face too. I think I'll get that at the back of his head. So let's go with our N9 again. And I'm going to give just a little bit right next to this candy cane. And again, if your pen's like mine, I hardly ever use it, so it's really wet. And if it starts to blob out, take the other end off. That'll help too. Let it pressurize. Okay, so I'm going to bring this one right up here like that. I think that looks pretty good. And down here, I want to go, let's go ahead and just do this section right here too. So let's give it a little bit of color right next to where his white belly was. And I'm not going to put any under here. I did it the first time, but it was way too dark, so I'm just going to leave his arm line right there and then just go with the next color. So then we're going to go with N7, and I want to get right up here next to his face a little bit, since I forgot it on the first round. And that'll leave just a little bit on the outside for our last N5. Okay, and then we're going to go into here. We're going to add a little bit of color. We just want to flick on top of that line and pull it out a little bit. I don't want to go too far because it is pretty dark, and if you get it all colored in, it's just going to be a big black blob. Okay, so let's go down here and do the same thing down here, and I think I'll do just a tiny bit underneath there. And then I'm going to grab N5 and I'm going to fill in his head up here behind his little candy cane. And then let's do the top of his arm right here. And then we're going to work our way around his arm, clear around to the other side. And I'm going to do it a second time because there's still a line there. I'm trying to blend that line around. Okay, and then I'm just going to continue going around. And I'm just going to leave a little bit of white like that, just for a little highlight on his arm. Okay, and then I'm going to go down here. Same thing. We want to go right along that line and soften it. And you want to fill in his fur on this side. And then I'm going to go around a second time. Soften that line a little bit more. And then go back up and pull out towards the edge so we can get that line shortened up and get a little bit of a white highlight there. Okay, and then I'm going to go with N3 and touch down on top of your N5 and fill that section in. Okay, and then I'm just going to take my pen and I'm going to brush over his whole inside arm just to lighten it up just a little bit and push color away. Same thing down here. You want to fill in this little white space. So I'm touching down on my N5 and brushing towards the middle. And then when I get it pretty blended, I'm going to take my pen and just flick it out here into the other section of his body there, just to push color away from that space. Make it a little bit lighter. Right, I think that's looking pretty good. So that leaves us with this little section over here of his tail. So I'm going to go, and his arm right here. So we're going to grab N9, and let's do a little bit of N9 right next to this scarf, and underneath where his scarf is. And then I want to go down along the bottom of his arm. And oh, that looks pretty good. And then for his tail, let's do right along that tail and up this side where it touches his arm. And then, let's get a little bit right here by the scarf too. And I think I'll go right along the bottom of some of these, this little bit of scarf here. That'll give it a little bit of dark space, even though it has a little fringe on there. Okay, and then N7. Grab N7. Brush on top of our N9. And fill some of that space in. Same down here. Go right over the top of our N9. Add a little bit more color. And add a little bit to the bottom of that scarf there. Okay, and then we'll go with N5. I want to fill the top of his arm in, and then go right around the edge until I meet up with the other side, and then I'm going to go ahead and do it again, because I need to soften that line a little bit more. And then I'm going to come back a third time and pull my line more up towards the top so I don't have quite so much white there. Okay, and then down here on the bottom, I'm going to go right along that edge and leave just a little bit of white there in the middle. And let me go over it a second time because the line's pretty bad. Okay. And then N3 to fill it in. So brush right over your white space, going right over those edges, and then after I get it filled in, I'm going to take my pen and push away from the white out to the edge of his arm. And that just kind of pushes the ink away from it and makes it lighten it up just a little bit all over. Same down here. Fill in your little white area, going along the edge of your colored area, and then I'm just going to flick over the whole thing with my pen. Lighten it up just a little bit. Next, let's do his beak and his little feet down here. And for that, I'm going to use YR 18, 15, and 12. And I'm going to start with YR 18. And for his little beak, I'm going to add a little bit on each side. And I don't use this pen very much, so be careful. Mine's really wet. And then we'll add a little bit on this side. And then on his underside of his mouth, I'm going to add a little bit on his little lip and a little bit on that side. And then I'm going to grab YR 15 and touch down on top of your 18 and pull up towards the middle here. Leave me a little white space, and then go down here and add a little bit to his bottom of his beak. And then YR 12 to fill it in. So we'll go right along that seam and fill in this little bottom one. And I'm actually going to brush all the way from the bottom here up towards the middle. And I'm going to go down here for his foot. And again, we'll start with YR 18 first. And let's do a little bit right next to this little candy cane, and then pull out away from his foot, to the bottom of his body. Same down here, let's go away from his body, and a little bit in there. And then I'm going to to go with wire 15 and touch down on top of your 18 and pull out here just a little bit more. Leave some space for your white, for your lightest color. Go along that line. I'm going to go back again on it again. It's kind of dark there. Okay, and then I'm going to take wire 12 to fill it in. So I'm going to go back in this time so I don't color out the lines. Okay, and then I'm going to flick right over the whole thing. And go back up this way just so I can be extra careful to not color the ground here. And then flick over the whole thing. So that leaves us now with the dreaded red. So for that we're going to use R29, 27, 24, 22, and 11. So I'm going to start up here at his hat. Go out just a little bit. And I'm going to start with R29. So let's start right down here. He's got this little patch of hat that's showing right here. So I'm going to go ahead and flick just a little bit of my 29 up from the bottom of that little pom-pom, and then there's this little line there that I'm going to add a little bit into. And then up here at the top, I'm going to flick right along the edge of this fur. And you can decide if you want to go down inside the little fur, or if you just want to draw a little line. But I'm going to go all the way across this fur clear to over to where it touches the candy cane. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think I'll bring this side up just a little bit more. Then I'm going to grab R27 and I'll go back down here to the bottom, and I want to flick just a little bit more on top of that last 29. Leave just a little bit of space there. Okay, and then up here you're going to add a little bit more color to these. So flick right on top of that line and just soften it just a little bit. And then I'm going to take R24. I'm going to fill in down here. So I'm going to go right. I'm going to brush away from that hat so I don't get it on accident. I'm just terrible with red. And we're just going to color that entire section in so we're done down there. Okay, then I'm going to go back up here, and we want to add a little bit more up here, soften that line. So you flick right on the edge. And then we're going to go with R22. And we're just going to add a little bit more like that. And I've left a little bit of space. So now I'm going to take my R11 and I'm going to go towards my color because I don't want to color outside the lines. And fill that in. I'm just going to go back across this, and it's going to look very crusty. But I'm pushing the color away from the top of the hat and down into my dark colors so it looks all faded and gross. So now I'm going to take my R22 again, and I'm just going to go from the top of my hat and flick down towards the dark red color and fill it all the way in. Oops. That kind of lightens it for me. It lightens it up here at the top of the hat and gives it a nice little texture. Okay, that's a pretty cute hat. So now let's go down here, and I'm going to continue down here so I don't have to touch this candy cane yet. So I'm going to do his scarf. So again, I'm going to grab my R29. And where do I want shadow? So I want it to be shadowed underneath of his cute little face. So I'm going to go ahead and dab a little bit. Whoops. Try to avoid those little dots. Right along the edge there, like that. And then I'm going to do, let's do the edge of this scarf right here. And there's little dots, so I'm going to skip over that one. And then this scarf is kind of underneath, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit right there and along the edge of this one where it's kind of touching it. And then R27's next. So again, you're going to put just a little bit more on top. You're just softening that line. And it depends on how red you want your scarf too. If you want it to be really red, you could pull it further out. Okay, I'll work my way along the edge of this one. Okay. And then I'm going to grab 24. And let's bring this one down here so it's more even down here. Go around this little dot. And up around this dot. And then pull this one down a little bit further. I'm filling this little side over here just so I don't have to mess with it over there anymore. And then we're going to go down this way and around some of these dots. And then I'm going to grab my 22 and go down here. And again, I want to leave a little bit of space for my lightest color so I can mush it up. That's my new technical term, mush it. Okay, bring this one out. Okay, and that leaves a little bit of white again. So again, I'm going to take my R12, or my R11, and I'm going to just push that color back up towards the dark. Same down here. Just push right on top of that. And down here. And that's just kind of scrunching all that color up. Makes it look like a big mess. And it's fine if you get some on your dots. That's not going to matter because we're going to color those in a minute. And then again, I take my R22 and I'm just going to flick over the whole scarf, avoiding the dots. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's do these little tassels down here. So the tassels, I'm going to take my R24 and I'm just going to dab right along the edge of my scarf all the way to the side. I'm going to take R22, flick right down on that line, and then I'm going to take my R12 or my R11 to fill it in. I must have meant to grab the R12 before and I just ended up with R11 when I started. And I'm going to go back across it a second time because I'm not going to do anything else to it. I'm just going to leave it this color. And then I'm going to take my R11 and I'm going to fill in these little circles. So it's perfect. So if you got some red in there, this will kind of squish it out. Okay, that looks pretty good so far. So let's go up here and do his little cheeks too, as long as we're up here. And for that, I'm going to use R24 first. So he's got some little lines there for his cheek already. So I'm just going to take my R24 and I'm just going to color right over the top of those, like that. Then I'm going to take R22 and I'm going to touch down on top of my 24 and I'm going to brush that color out a little bit. Extend my circle. Same for this side. Extend it out just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to take my R11 and I'm going to complete my circle. So I'm going to go up here and make my circle all the way around. Okay, and this one I don't want it to bump into his eye, so I'm going to kind of go down just a little bit right there. Got a little crazy. Okay, and then I'm going to go up here after I've made my circles. I'm going to go back and I'm just going to kind of go in a little circle. And that will push all the color into a circle and kind of squish the darker colors back together, but gives them a nice little rosy cheeks. So that leaves us with this candy cane. So believe it or not, these little red stripes in here are not very big, and red's a pretty saturating color, so you need to just use a little bit or it's going to bleed. So I'm going to start down here at the bottom, and I'm going to start with R29, and I'm just going to give each little section a little dab on the edge. Not too much because you don't want to oversaturate the paper. Then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to do the same thing on each of these bigger stripes. I'm going to skip this little section in the middle, that little tiny stripe, because I'm just going to make that one a light pink later, because what happened is that I still get too much ink on there and it kind of bleeds in there a little bit, and I'm going to use my lightest color, R11, to erase a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to work my way up here, and here's a little section behind his hand. I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. And then I'm just going to go and add a little bit of color on each of these sides. Skip the middle one again. And just work my way up here a little bit. And this works out great doing it last too, because my hand's not going to be going over the top of it. Okay, so I'm only going up that far. That looks pretty good so far. So then I'm going to grab R27. And I'm going to brush right on top. So we're just adding a little bit more, but feathering that line. Trying not to get too much on the paper. Right, and then we'll go with our 24. Let's just work our way this way. I don't have much space left on that one, so I'm going to fill that one in. And then our 22. I'm going to fill it in up here. Oops, I forgot this one down here at the bottom. So which one did I leave off on? 24. I forgot it. Okay, and then 22 to fill that one in. Okay, so I'm liking how that looks, so I'm not going to take my R11 and brush over it again because I'm afraid it's going to just bleed everywhere because that's quite a bit of ink. So let's go up here and do the rest of these. So again, you're going to start with R29 and give each little edge a little flick. Work my way around to the other side. Me and this R29 are not friends. It's just persnickety. And I don't know if it's the pen nib. I've changed the pen nib, but it just seems like it's always dark and it seems like it's always getting stuck. It's probably just my imagination, but it doesn't feel like it. The whole pen doesn't feel like it flows as well as the other pens. And I've actually traded pens. I've replaced it and got another one and it still does it. So it just must be the color. It just feels kind of glumpy to me. And it's probably all my imagination. Alright, that looks pretty good. So let's switch to 27. And I'll go down here. I'll fill that little bitty section in. And work my way around to the other side. And then we'll go with 24. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in this little section down here. And work my way around to the opposite side. A little bit on that one. And then we're going to fill it in with R22. I'll go ahead and grab that little section there. And move it over here so I don't accidentally get my hand in that red, as it never seems like it's dry all the way, and I always get my hand in it and I move it around somewhere else on my project. And this cute little section. Alright, so that's all for our red stripe. So I'm going to go ahead and take my R11 now, and I'm just going to color in between each one of these on the little tiny stripe, just to give it a little color. And if yours, you could leave it white too, that's fine. Just I tended to bleed a little bit through, and so this was my cure for that, was just to add a little pink in there. And let's go ahead and color this bottom part, even though that was probably supposed to be white. So here is our cute little penguin with candy cane all colored up. Doesn't he look adorable? And then here is the finished card. Whoops, wrong way. I put the whole card together, and as I said down here, I ended up adding some shaved ice down here where the snow was going to be, so I covered up all that blue. But you can see a little bit through the sparkles there. And then I added some stickles to all the white stripes on the candy cane, gave it some shimmer, and of course his little dots on his little scarf. And then I added this great Mayart's wrinkled gold ribbon. I thought that was really pretty, went perfect with the card. And then I cut out this cute doily from Paper Tray Ink and stuck that on there. So if you'd like to grab a kit and color along with me, head over to the store and grab this one before it's gone. Thanks for coloring with me today. You have a great day. Bye.